absolute pleasure to have you on the show this evening.
Thank you. It's nice to invite
An
me.
extremely well-established filmmaker, I think we can describe you as, and you're talking ahead of the premiere of your new film, which is in London next week. It's called Solitude. Tell us all about that.
Solitude, well, it's a film that uses portraits of Nico, the singer-songwriter. There's three experimental films on Nico in her early career, and they're in my film, in my timeline. And then, and I've got sections of my films in between, and they're portraits of her. So it's a kind of, I think, Nico wrote about "I'll Be Your Mirror." You remember that famous song "I'll Be Your Mirror" by Nico? I mean, in a way, she's my mirror. You know, so the film is Nico is my mirror.
Yeah, I mean, to get to the nitty-gritty, I know not everyone who's tuned in will know the Nico you're referring to. So, I mean, give us a little bit of a backstory to the film Solitude, which is very much based on this, well, I think we can describe as an icon in many ways, no?
Yes, definitely.
She was part of the band Velvet Underground, which had a huge following back in the day. Then she went to do her own thing. I know Velvet Underground were managed by Andy Warhol, such a famous pop artist. No? I mean, you can explain better than me.
You're just answering your own question.
But yeah, tell us a bit about Nico.
Yeah, Nico. The Nico we're talking about is Nico. Her name was Christa Pafgen. I hope I've got that correct. It's a German name, and she went by the name of Nico. And she was a model, in German, and she then migrated to Paris, where she, in the 50s, late 50s, she modeled for Coco Chanel and very haute couture houses like that. She's extremely well known as a model. Also, she did, you might know, and you might even have, but you will not remember her, but I would have perhaps remembered her, although I don't, doing the Sherry, you know, the Terry adverts.
Oh, right, okay.
Terry Meva.
Yeah.
And she did one of those campaigns. So she's there as a photographic model.
Right.
And then, I mean, in terms of her life, her biography, she also was very iconic in Federico Fellini's La Dolce Vita, where she had she was part of one of the I think the wife or the girlfriend of one of the princes, the principessas in La Dolce Vita. And of course she was there as herself as well. You know, she didn't take a part in that, you know, in the sense that she was there being Nico, playing a part.
Right.
But she was very iconic there. And then she went to New York, because she got fed up with the whole couture world and that whole fashion world, and I think she just decided that she wanted to be a singer. Somebody said, "Oh, you have an amazing voice. That's what you should do." And she had a boyfriend at the time, and I think he encouraged her. And she went to New York, and there she was already very well known, and I think she fell into the factory, you know, and the Warhol factory, and became part of that set of people in New York in the 60s. And I think it was Warhol. I mean, of course, I don't know my history. You have to go to the biographies for this, but of course I know enough. And my understanding is that at that point, Andy Warhol thought that she looked so amazing because she was like the typical sort of ice queen, you know, very tall, very beautiful, you know, glacial, extraordinary looks. And she had this very deep voice as well. And so he thought that she would be a great frontwoman for the newly formed band that he was patrocinando, you know, the Velvet Underground, which was the Lou Reed and John Cale, and Maureen Tucker and Morrison, I can't remember his name. And so he thought, you're going to have her as your front woman. Yeah. And they were not very happy about it. And indeed, she did do their first album with them, which I think was called Nico and the Velvet Underground. And then she did one with her own, which is the Chelsea Girls, it's called. And she hung out there for like, I think, I don't know how long, but in the to the 70s, early 70s.
Nina, I'm always fascinated by Gibraltarians who move away from Gibraltar and make something of themselves. So what was it like for you when you first moved away from Gibraltar to the UK? Was it daunting, exciting?
Well, it was very exciting because I went to art school. I went to St. Martin's. So it was very exciting to not... I wasn't on my own trying to struggle. You know, I went into a kind of ready-made situation, which was very exciting with other young people. And then, yeah, so I enjoyed it very much. And it was completely...
The art scene in the 70s. That
the art scene in the 70s, which was great.
That must have been something.
A little insight into
great.
how that was, yeah. One experience, no? Memories that last a lifetime, I think would be fair to say.
Yeah, it was fantastic because it was a very...
Give us your craziest story.
Craziest story.
Come on, you must have a few, Nina.
Well, I mean, there were all sorts of crazy stories, but maybe I didn't experience any. I don't know.
You're too focused on your work, weren't you?
I was, yeah, totally.
Sure. Exactly.
Well, I was painting at the time, so it was a... I tell you, the most interesting part of being at St. Martin's, in a way, was that you didn't really get any pedagogy.
Pedagogy, what a word that is.
There was no teaching as such.
Right.
You know, you were painting and the tutor, very well-known painters like Gillian Ayres or John Hoyland would come up to you, especially Gillian Ayres, they would just talk to you, you know, without...
And you a sponge, you'd soak it all in.
Yeah, you just have a conversation, you know. It wasn't really about, oh, what's the message here, or this is how you should do it, or don't do this, do that. They just talked to you about their own experiences.
Right.
So there was no... So the interesting thing about St. Martin was that there was no teaching. It was completely experimental.
Everyone kind of
it was
allowed to thrive and do their own thing.
Do their own thing within this context of talking.
Right.
And it was very eccentric, you could say.
Yeah.
But it was very unpedagogical.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, we need a dictionary next time.
That's a great word. A word of the day, 100%.
So that was exciting. Yeah, it was interesting. It threw you off course, you know.
Yeah. So Nina, you very much went to a very well-established art school. I know you've said before your mum was a very natural singer, so you had all these kind of influences around. How did you go into filmmaking from there? Was that something that you always had your eye set on?
Well, I decided that I rejected painting for various political reasons, you know, at the time. And I rejected it and then fell into this gap. And it was like... And then I started to, like, think about things that looked like films and write things that felt like had time in them and rooms in them and atmospheres in them. Okay. And so I started to write and they felt like films, really. And so I started to make things that corresponded to those things I had been writing at the Royal College. But I didn't go to the film school. I went to, again, quite a marginal department called Environmental Media, which was more for performance video, avant-garde, really. Yeah. So that's how I started to make films.
Yeah, and you've made quite... I believe I'm right in saying there was some in the maybe late 80s, early 90s. There was one that involved the Alameda Gardens, I think I'm right in saying. Yeah. There was one pretty big one, what, about 3-4 years ago now, A Die of Sadness Crying for You. It was called, which was about the copla, no? Which is quite popular. I don't know. It may still. So you know more about it than me again. But it's kind of a form of singing and dancing. Yeah, I'm right in saying.
Well, copla is a sort of genre. Yeah. It's a Spanish genre. You know, it's a lyrical form genre. In Spain, they tend to call it canción española. Right. Really covers a lot of ground.
Yeah. What would it be? Or what would you compare it to most? I mean, for anybody that's not heard of...
Copla is...
more similar to...
It's very popular now, again. No, it's completely... A friend of mine from Cadiz said, when you introduce copla to a British audience, make sure you tell them that it's not flamenco.
Right.
Oh, right, OK.
It's absolutely not. I mean, it's it comes from a different source, and it comes from the lyrical theatre.
I see.
So it's a very different thread. It's not folk.
Right, OK.
So it's very much to do with the lyrics and the performance, the emotion, the story, the history.
Not everyone can say they've had experience in the BBC. That's quite cool. Tell us about that.
Sorry, I trained as an editor at the BBC. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I trained for a little while. I was freelancing, you know. Like after the Royal College, you have to make your way in some way. So I freelanced on a lot of... For 10 years, I'd say, on and off.
I mean, BBC, the creme de la creme, no? That would have
well, I was a
left you in good
freelance, you know, I wasn't...
Creme de la creme behind GBC, of course.
I freelanced. I learned a lot from editors and people like that, you know. I was just a mere assistant and learning things.
Of course, yeah. So, Solitude, next week, premiering in London. I know, obviously, you come down to Jib quite often, but you're very much, as Robin said before, kind of based in London. It must be in a very, very exciting time for you. How are you feeling ahead of the
Well,
premiere?
I'm very excited about it, especially because the film will be shown with live music, with a live music score, electronic music score. So it's one musician called Graham Dowdall, who goes AKA Gagarin.
Yeah.
He's an electronic musician, and he used to tour with Nico as part
Right,
of
okay.
her band, The Faction. So he not only knows Nico and worked with her, but he, you know, has given quite a lot to this project, actually. We both got into it, and I think it's amazing for me to have him there performing the music. So.
What are your expectations for this?
What?
Your expectations?
We've done a rehearsal, so I think it's great. It's him that night, really, because I'd be there just as a viewer, really. I think it's going to be great. I mean, I'm completely sure it's going to be great. I just hope it's got a good vibe and that people will come to it. You know, that's usually what you want for an event, don't you? For people to come. And that's what I hope.
For sure. So, I mean, am I right in saying this is a lot of people perhaps who go and watch a film premiere might expect like sitting back with some popcorn in the cinema, watching the scenes unfold, but this seems like a more interactive experience. And you mentioned there's going to be performances from Gagarin as well.
Yes.
So I guess we can expect, I guess, a myriad of different things happening?
No, he'll just be on stage with the screen. He won't be visible except for a light on his computer. And we've already rehearsed it, so he knows his cues. And we'll be performing. And we did it from beginning to end, so we'll be performing 72 minutes straight off. And it varies along the way, and he will be responding to pieces of music that are already there by Manuel Gottsching and a young guitarist called James Creed.
Yeah.
And his own pieces. He'll be redoing them. So it's kind of like a new live soundtrack to the one that's already mixed in a way. So it'll be a new thing. And live. So, and I sort of feel that he should just respond as well to the image as he wishes as well.
Okay.
But he has rehearsed it all.
Yeah.
You know, so it'll be very exciting. And, you know, like I'm just going to sit and enjoy it, really.
You've done your bit.
Yeah,
I've done my bit, really. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I feel like I have.
But the bit continues, doesn't it? Because there's a second part.
Well, it is part of it. I don't know whether this is what you're asking me, but it is part of a diptych.
Right.
This film, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in. I'm hoping to do a film on another. I mean, I don't go around doing films about singers. It's just that I'm interested in the voice and the whole. I've had a relationship with it for many years in my work, and worked with many singers and so forth. So, so this is a film that I want to do on Maria Callas. Is that what you're asking me about?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yes, I see Nico and Maria as a kind of diptych, and both like a very contralto space and a very operatic space. And Maria also used to say that she used to have this strange voice that used to come out of this very deep space that she sometimes didn't recognize. It very, very powerful. So I'm interested in those issues to do with the voice, not just like the biographical singer, you know. But I hope I will get to make it.
I'm sure you will. Well, some fascinating artists that I'm sure many people perhaps might not be too familiar with, but you're obviously Nico in particular with this film Solitude coming up. Clearly, a singer that has really left a lasting impression on you, no?
Yes, but also the interesting thing is that John Cale, whom I'm sure you know, has just had an interview in the New Yorker, and I think in The Guardian, talking about Nico, because he's just releasing an album on Friday, and he's done a song on Nico, thinking about Nico, and how Nico really, and this is why I admire her so much, she craved to be recognised, and she kind of never was properly. And now he's saying, he himself says in an interview only today, how amazing she was, and what an amazing singer-songwriter she was. And it's just perfect that, you know, she's been given her, her recognition. You know, how now or whenever. But I'm very happy that he's, you know, we're coming to her now.
Definitely.
which she definitely deserves.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the
Okay,
show this
pleasure,
evening, Nina.
pleasure.
Yeah, really interesting. Hope
Pleasure,
it goes
thank
well
you.
next week.
Thank you.